Okay, we are on air, and we have 0 people on right now, so we actually still have a little bit more time.
Always good to be early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not 5 minutes early, you're late.
Oh, there we go. Got 3 people on. Let me give a few more minute or two. Okay. All right, we're at 13 people right now. Why don't we give it just about 30 more seconds here. We're expecting about 50 people, or 50 people have RSVP'd for tonight, so love that civic engagement here in Piedmont. Okay, why don't we get going here? Welcome everyone to tonight's Measure UU live Q&A with Bob McBain, Betsy, Smegal, Andersen, and Sarah Pearson. We are also happy to have Sarah Lillivand in attendance. She will pop in to provide additional facts as requested, as necessary. I'm very excited that we have a chance to discuss this important Measure UU as a community, because this measure is ultimately about replacing a critical resource for our community. I was glad to see that we had many questions submitted before the event, and we will be addressing all of the topics that have been raised by those questions. I would also like to invite everyone to submit questions to us via the chat on your right-hand side. With that, I'd like to start off by having each person introduce themselves, and maybe each of you could share what Piedmont's community pool has meant in your life and what role has it played. Betsy?
Okay, thank you, Dion. Thank you for moderating tonight. Really appreciate it. I want to start also by thanking the Yes on Measure UU campaign co-chairs, Amy Albrecht, Ann Callahan, and Vince Saunders for giving us, for inviting us to answer questions this evening. I also want to clarify that all of the speakers here tonight are participating in their individual personal capacities as Piedmont residents and not speaking on behalf of or representing any government entities. So I know there are lots of questions and I look forward to answering them this evening, but in my mind, Measure UU is actually very simple. The current Piedmont pool is crumbling, and Measure UU is about whether or not we want to invest in a replacement that meets the needs of our residents for the next 50 years. My own personal affiliation with the Piedmont pool actually started when I was 5 years old, which is quite some time ago now. I proudly earned my white patch and the ability to swim in the big pool. I went on to swim and compete with the Piedmont swim team for the next 13 years, and I had my first job as a lifeguard and swim instructor at the Piedmont pool. So for me, the pool is what psychologists now call the third place, or I should say a third place in my life. I had my home, I had school, and starting at age 5, I had the Piedmont pool. The coaches, the pool staff, the adult lap swimmers, all had as much influence on my life, if not more, than my fabulous teachers in the Piedmont school system. Community pool is the one place where residents of all ages, from babies all the way up, are away from their computers, off their cell phones, and actually spending time together, exercising, playing, and socializing. So for some children and adults, swimming is actually the only form of aerobic exercise they can do. And to me, Measure UU is not just about a pool. I think that's important. It's really about community, and it's about investing in a healthy, vibrant, and engaging community for our residents of all ages. So thank you.
Maybe Bob?
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation this evening, and I appreciate everyone's engagement. So I'm Bob McBain, and I'm currently the mayor of Piedmont. and finishing up soon. Been on the council for 8 years, and before that on the Recreation Commission. So it's about 15 years I've been watching things in the city. And I've lived here about 30 years. And one thing was clear to me very early on was what a great asset this community has in the community pool. And we did belong as a member of the pool back when my kids were quite a bit smaller and my son was on the swim team. But since that time, what I've been able to do is see how important and vital the pool is to the community and how it serves and touches so many different people, from swim teams to the schools to Boy Scouts to swim lessons to lifeguards. It is something that's quite valuable. It is an incredible amenity and something that's really very special to Piedmont. And it's so special because it's right in the center of town. It's something that's very vital to all of us. And since I got involved with the recreation side of the city, I've watched the pool, and we came on the council. It became clear we needed to do something about the pool. We needed to do everything we could to make it, get a new pool. Once it was clear we really couldn't preserve the current one. So I've been working hard with the council and the staff to come up with a plan, and I thought it was vitally important and only fair and really critical to put this in front of Piedmont residents and find out where we are. We need to get a new pool. I think Piedmont residents understand how vital it is and how many people are touched by it. So I'm hopeful it will pass. It's a very valuable community asset. And I think we would find out how much we missed it if we didn't have it. So that's why we've been working hard to put this forward and why we put it on the ballot. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Sarah Pearson.
Hello. I'm Sarah Pearson, and I'm a pediatrician by training and a mother of 3 young adults. My baby, Nate, is in 12th grade now, and I've been on the school board for nearly 9 years. Our family has such happy associations with the Piedmont Pool. We moved here nearly 20 years ago when our oldest child was a toddler, and we felt so fortunate to be able to walk up the hill and go to the Piedmont Pool. It was a place that we made friends with other families who had young children. And as our family grew, our children all took swim lessons. They earned their white patches. And the Piedmont Pool became a favorite place for us to meet up with friends and host summer birthday parties. As soon as the children were old enough for school, I would walk to the pool in the middle of the day for a stolen swim. Most days I would bump into someone I knew, and often we'd end up kicking for a while or chatting in the locker room. And no matter how I felt going into the pool, I always felt full of gratitude when I was in that water and absolutely great afterwards. To me, the Piedmont Pool has been a place where people of all ages have formed many happy memories. But pools don't last forever, as we all know. And I've watched as time and time again, the staff has tried to patch up Piedmont's beloved pool. I was so sad to learn that for the financial and environmental reasons, it wouldn't be worth reopening after it was locked with the shutdown in March. And of course, this is such a difficult time with a pandemic, distance learning, and the fires, just to name a few of the things that we're all dealing with. But one thing that consistently made me feel good and hopeful was rallying our community around rebuilding the pool. We all need something to look forward to, and my hope is that we enthusiastically pass Measure UU so current and future generations can learn to swim and to create happy memories of their own right here in the middle of our town.
Lovely. All right, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Lilliband, and I am currently the city administrator for the city of Piedmont. I spent 5 years as the recreation director prior to that, but I am here tonight in my private capacity. But I am going to turn my video off here momentarily, and I will be here only for factual clarifications if needed. But to answer the moderator's question of what has the Piedmont pool, to me, I will just say that it has been probably the one city facility I have thought about and learned the most about in the last 6 years in my role. So with that, I'm going to turn my video off and say goodbye.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Okay, great. Well, I think let's start our panel discussion with a few nuts and bolts questions about the timing of the measure. For people who are on the call today, maybe not everyone is as familiar. So what is Measure UU, and why is Measure UU needed now?
Okay. Betsy, you into that one? Or?
Oh, Betsy, you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm getting used to this new platform. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so the question is, why is Measure UU needed now? And the answer is very simple. We have eked out every last ounce of usability in our current 56-year-old pool. Repairing the current pool is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. It would cost $2 million to replace the deck, which is crumbling. And it's not even clear that that would help the pool mechanics, which are failing, because it's like replacing the exterior of a car and still having a 56-year-old engine. So unless we do a full replacement, a full rebuild, we're not going to achieve the goals of the community, which is to have a workable, reliable pool facility. So looking ahead, it will take about 2 to 3 years to design and build a replacement facility. The design we have right now is conceptual. So there will be a design review process. There'll be cost estimates. There'll be an environmental analysis. All of that has to happen. And so that's probably a 12 to 18 month process. And that will be a public process with public input and oversight. And then it'll be another 12 to 18 months for construction. So the reason we need to get going now is because this pool is done, and it's, if we want as a community to have a pool and we want to minimize the amount of time we're going to be without a pool, then we need to get going, and Measure UU is the way to do that.
Yeah, I think that this contrast, Betsy, that you sort of highlighted of this pool that's crumbling today versus sort of what we want to accomplish is on the sort of top of mind for a lot of people. In fact, I'm getting some questions right now about this idea of repair. And, why would you do this in the middle of a pandemic? And why can't we wait 1 to 2 years? I think, there's sort of this urgency and this sort of alternative to repair that some people are wondering about.
Well, I would say that we have looked at this, and maybe we can pull in Sarah in a minute, but I think on this we've looked at repairing, and as Betsy mentioned, it really is not feasible to repair. Costs would be enormous, and we'd basically be putting massive amounts of just more and more expensive duct tape onto a pool facility that's just not going to work. Not going to work in the long run. It probably wouldn't work in the interim. So it's really not a feasible alternative. It's just not something that we have looked at that. We've looked at it. We had various consultants come in and scale and give us ideas of what we could do. And none of it's really practical to do. And we didn't find ourselves then 3 or 4 years from now with the same old pool, the same old duct tape, and the same failing facility. So that's why I think it's important to go now.
Yeah, so using that car analogy, so one thing that I'm sort of hearing is that going into an incredibly detailed process of replacing every single piece, it's really obvious that is just not the solution that's going to meet our community's needs.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that about the car. I think one thing we need to remember as well, that once you would start even a major repair of this, you would start getting into areas such as ADA compliance and factors that would magnify the cost quite significantly, and yet you're not going to be getting a better facility or a current facility that's going to provide to serve the needs of the community. So we did look at that, because I think most people would say, why don't we just repair it? And it's clear that this is not a viable alternative.
Thank you. Yes, and we've been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. Well, let's talk about for a second, what happens if Measure UU doesn't pass?
I can answer that one. So we have not talked about this at council, so I can't speak on behalf of council. But I think if Measure UU doesn't pass, the pool will be closed permanently for the reasons that Bob just expressed. We cannot continue to sink money into a failing facility. One of the heaters is currently broken again. It is not clear that the pumps will start up if we try to turn the pool back on. And we're also in a position where we've let all the staff go and or reassigned the staff to schoolmates. So it would make a lot of sense if Piedmont voters do not pass UU for this to be the point where we exit from the Piedmont pool.
Sarah.
Just tag on a little something from the school side. So the schools are fortunate to have the option, to use the pools. The city uses some of the school facilities, and the school gets to use the city facilities, and we have a nice reciprocal working relationship together. And without a pool for water polo last year, the district paid $10,605 to Peralta Community College. And I don't have exactly how much we paid for the swim team use, but in general, the expectation is that the district would need to pay about $10,000 per sport, per season, for access to another pool. So when we just start thinking of, some other ongoing costs, that's just a little piece of it to put in, but I just wanted to throw that in since it is relevant. And just thinking also of the kids then needing to carpool out to another facility, being in cars, which isn't always so safe and takes time and isn't the most environmentally friendly thing either, not to mention the difficulty sometimes finding these facilities or being able to, schedule a practice time that works. Oftentimes the kids then are having to practice at, 7 to 9 p.m., that kind of thing. So anyway, just a little thing, but it is relevant to not having a pool.
Well, I don't think it's little because the things that you guys had each cited, I consider those sort of like your first order effects of the pool being closed and having to spend a little more money. I am sort of interested in your thoughts on the sort of second and third order effects on the community, and being the only city in the East Bay that doesn't actually have a pool. Would love just your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that was sort of my general comment about not recognizing when you first sort of scale this problem, how many areas the pool does touch and how many people use it. If it's not you, there are lap swimmers, there's swim teams, there's swim lessons, there's summer programs, there's rec programs. It's really quite extensive. And the more you lay this out to people, there's a sense of grasping, well, I didn't realize it affected that many people. It really does. So there's going to be a big, it will vary from person to person, of course, but there's going to be a big hole being created in the community. And it won't be just the empty pool. It will be in the daily activities and lives, and people, whether they're lap swimmers or swim team, that will have to find alternatives. And that's going to be problematic and will be expensive. And it really kind of runs against the grain of what makes Piedmont very special, in that we are a real community and we have great facilities for our residents. So I think that's what, when you think second and third order effects, you probably wouldn't know that until a few months into it and you realize, wow, so there's no pool. Okay, so I think that's something, and it does resonate with people when they begin to appreciate the number of touches that the pool does have with our community.
Mm. Yes, Betsy.
I could reply to that question too. I mean, the pool is a central location that, as I mentioned in my earlier comments, that people of all ages kind of come together to engage in this activity, where again, you're not in front of a computer, you're not on a cell phone, you're actually with each other in a pool, swimming laps, playing, having lessons, and all of that will obviously go away, as will the jobs. Myself, a lifeguard, I know lots of other current students have talked about the importance of lifeguarding and teaching swim lessons in town as your first job. And that will no longer be an option in town. So we'll lose a big source of youth employment. And then families looking to swim, or individuals looking to swim, will scatter. I mean, everyone's not going to go to the same pool, right? So some people will try to find limited lap space in other communities' pools. Some folks who might have the ability to join private swim clubs, but there won't be a Piedmont swim center anymore. There'll be no more Piedmont swim team. So that, I think, has been a tradition for at least 50 years, and that will go away. And I don't mean that those kids will necessarily stop swimming, but I don't think the team, if it continues, won't be called the Piedmont swim team, because there'll be no nexus with Piedmont anymore. So these are some of the, as you said, secondary and tertiary impacts that I don't think are necessarily at the forefront of people's minds today.
Sarah, please.
Sorry, I just sort of wanted to build. I think there's so much to say about various ways that the pool can create community. But another aspect, as Betsy was talking, I was thinking about, probably all the listeners are aware of the mental health concerns right now. It's very widespread. It's actually, with the census, they tracked about 78% of adults responding to the census noted that they had either anxiety or depression that would count as severe anxiety or depression for a week or more. And this was in July, like normally in a time when you'd think that in California. And the prevalence is worse with younger people also. But so when we think about, and the school board has been so concerned about mental and physical health of students. And we know it's related too, right? We all know that when we're physically active, we feel better. But I think one thing is just in terms of having the pool, it's sort of psychologically beautiful, I think, to have this pool in the center of the town that anybody in our town could have access to. I mean, as a public pool, anybody could have access to it. But I also think that as we look at different sports, we've been aware that there is much less interest in football and some of the contact sports now, because they are associated with concussions and other high-risk activities, not to mention right now COVID and any sort of contact being much worse with that. But, swimming is one of those beautiful activities that really is just physically so good for you in so many ways, and such a life sport too. So once people learn it, it is something. And one thing I used to love when I used to go swimming was, seeing the women that were there doing like water aerobics and stuff that were, so I think it really is just to have that space in the center of the town, but also an activity that people of all ages can enjoy that is just so healthy for our physical health and our mental health. It seems like it's really important that we create those places at this point.
Thank you, Sarah. I think mental health is certainly very, very, very underestimated in terms of the impact, I think, on people, and it's students, it's people of every age in our community. I did have a quick question that just wanted to give you guys just a chance to confirm, which is that if this measure doesn't pass, I just want to sort of confirm the Piedmont pool is going to be inevitably closed permanently.
Well, I would say that would be a decision that City Council would have to make. So I think that would be a likely outcome for a couple of different reasons. I think, as Betsy had explained, with no sort of exit strategy, no plan for the future, it'd be hard to justify the continued cost of that pool and to re-gear it up to serve the community, even with its compromised state as it is. And also, I think it would be only fair to the residents to give people the notice that if they really want to continue their swim activities, they may have to find an alternative.
Yeah.
But that's a decision, and I will say, and maybe Betsy can agree with this, it's not a decision we will make lightly. It's not something we're going to really think about that and make sure. But I think that's the direction that it's more than likely headed. But we're hopeful we won't have to make that decision.
Well, and another way to answer that too is I think the reason the pool is on the November ballot is because there was a meeting back in June where council was discussing permanent closure of the pool, and we were also discussing what to put on the ballot in November. So out of that meeting, I think I can't remember, we didn't vote on it, but I think was a feeling among, at least myself, I guess I can only speak for myself, that, we wanted to give voters a chance to get going on a replacement before we were forced to permanently close the pool. So the timing is not coincidental. The timing is because the pool is on its last legs, and residents need to tell with their vote, whether or not having a pool in Piedmont is important to them. And my hope is that it is.
To me, that's what this measure is about. It's really a chance for Piedmont voters to have a say that they want a new pool before it's closed. There's actually a question from the community here. It says, why did the city council put a bond on the ballot after completion of the study or why did they not put a bond on the ballot after the study in November 2016 or 2018?
Okay, I think that the decision to go to the public with a ballot measure has to be very thoughtful, has to be very careful, have to be really evaluate the needs and requirements. So we knew in 2016 what the study said we had. But then we need to talk about what is going to be realistic, what is going to be practical, and how would we begin to explain, more importantly, not so much to the campaign, but to explain and educate the community as to why the needs are for the pool. And we've been doing that, or the campaign and people and the council as well, through various meetings and hearings have been ongoing for quite a few years now, 4 years. This is something we need to do. So it was a matter of evaluating alternatives and not jumping to conclusions and bringing something to the public that would not work, that would not be realistic, that would not be comprehensive. That's what you did want. We did not want to bring something to the community that would be ill thought out, ill conceived, and people would go, they don't know what they're talking about. So this time, I think we do know exactly what we're talking about. I think this is why it's such a good measure, and it's well backed up and well researched, and it's quite thorough. And that's something you always need to do when you go to the public. Believe me, after all these years in council, you only have so many opportunities to go to the community and ask for to be either be elected or actually ask for their support for a ballot measure, whether it's a tax measure. So it's very important to get it right, and it's very important to be very clear, to be very transparent, and to be very comprehensive. And that's why we're doing it now.
Betsy.
Also, if I can go back to what I said earlier, I think you have a city council that is very fiscally oriented. And I think, this group wanted to eke every last minute out of this pool facility. And unfortunately, because of the age-related maintenance costs, it's gotten increasingly expensive to operate year after year, such that because of age-related costs in 2019, the city lost $1,000 a day keeping the pool open, operational, staffed. So that is a pretty hefty run rate. And, if people think about, we were talking about the car analogy earlier, kind of trying to keep this 56-year-old gas guzzler going, the city staff have to now bid on and fly in replacement parts from around the country when something breaks down, because no one makes them anymore. The pool is so old, no one manufactures parts for it anymore. So I just, the timing is of Measure UU is driven by the fact that this pool is really, truly done.
Yeah, if I just let's go on too long here, but I think that to echo Betsy's comment, the staff has done more than a yeoman job since the city took the pool over almost a decade ago, keeping it together, keeping it working, keeping costs down, minimizing the expenses. But I think that along with trying to figure out what we do need, we have had at the same time a recognition that despite a lot of really great efforts and to keep this thing going, it's getting increasingly expensive to do it. So now is the time to call the issue.
Yeah, I think it's been notable to me that it's millions of dollars just to repair the deck, but we're not talking about all the equipment that's required to run it. And what's I think sometimes gets lost is the pool, with all of those Band-Aids, hasn't actually even been open every single day. It's actually been closed many, many, many days because of the equipment failures and issues.
Right, that's true.
So let's move on now to some questions, very specific questions about funding. What will Measure UU funds do, and what expenses are going to be covered by this measure?
Sorry, my mic was off. I can jump in.
Yeah.
So Measure UU is about financing, right? It allows the city to issue bonds to pay for the replacement construction of the Piedmont pool. What is entailed in that is actually taking the current configuration, which is 3 pools, and turning that into actually 2 pools. So the big pool would become wider and deeper to allow for more lanes and also work for the very popular and growing sport of water polo that I think Sarah Pearson talked about earlier. And then the medium pool kind of gets rechristened as a recreation pool because that also gets larger and has a 0 depth entry. So folks with mobility issues can simply just walk into the pool. And that really, the recreation pool is where you can have robust activities with the recreation department as far as swim lessons and classes. There can be therapeutic swim. I mean, we really get a lot of use out of that recreation pool that is not currently feasible in our medium pool. So to fit those larger pools, the conceptual design would have the footprint of the facility go out to the sidewalk. So there wouldn't be that driveway now, that kind of random driveway that goes from the recreation building kind of up around to the marking room. That would become part of the pool footprint. And then the bathhouse, which is, the restrooms and the locker rooms and the showers and all of that, that would move from its current location to be up on Bonita and be adjacent to the tennis courts. So what we get out of having the building up in that area is you actually get some dual use facilities with the tennis courts. And if the building and the concept is 2 stories, and if that does come to pass, the second story would have some community space that would be available for classes, it would be available for meetings. That can be something that is talked about again in this kind of design review process, when we look at the design and say, we did this 4 years ago, let's revisit it, let's look at our climate action goals, let's look at our, everything else related to this, all the questions that have come up, let's talk about it, and with the overall goal being to build a pool that meets our needs, that meets the objectives of the city, that doesn't exceed the budget now that's been established by the financing. That is really, truly what we all want, is to build something that's going to work for us, that people are going to feel really good about. They're going to be so excited to come and use it. And that's what I think Measure UU is all about.
Excellent.
I would just also add that the measure does provide for, that is the full cost of the project, architectural fees, contingencies, what is colloquially referred to as soft costs, which are always hard dollars, but they're soft costs, so to speak. And that is all covered in that. So there's no additional expenses we would anticipate at the present time that are not germane to this project. Excellent.
We have a question from the community about the cost of Measure UU, and very specifically, so how much will Measure UU cost? How long will the additional assessment last? Seeing the amount per 100 square feet, but doesn't list anywhere how long the assessment will last, so I can calculate the total amount we would be paying. And will the amount of the tax ever decrease? So maybe just a few deets here.
Betsy, you have that answer, right?
I do have that answer. I actually have it right here at my fingertip. So Measure UU, as I mentioned before, would allow the city to issue up to $19.5 million in 30-year fixed rate bonds. So the most Measure UU will cost is 2.6 cents per $100 of assessed home value, and that is the value that appears on your property tax bill. It is not your fair market value. So if you look at your property tax bill, or you can go to the Alameda County Assessor's Office and look up your property tax assessed value. So it's 2.6 cents per $100. For the median Piedmont home, that works out to about less than 75 cents a day. It's actually more like 70 cents a day. So this would go, as I mentioned, for 30 years, but the math is sort of fun on this because our assessed values actually go up year over year. Historically, you can go back 50 years and they will go up year after year because homes that have been owned for a long time change hands and get reassessed. So the amount that you're paying per dollar of assessed value actually goes down over those 30 years. And with conservative assumptions in year 30, it will be actually not 10 cents, it'll be a penny. It'll go from 2.6 cents down to a penny per 100 of assessed value.
Okay, fantastic. So, Bob, did you have? Okay.
No, on that one, that answers that question, I think.
Great. Well, we've got actually quite a few questions about the cost estimates and how is the bond amount determined. People just love to know, I think, with a little bit more detail, how do we get to the 19.5 million, and what are the sort of elements, and what was the process?
Should we call on Sarah Olivan to answer this one?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sarah, if you could pop in and maybe talk a little bit about how we came to these numbers.
Mary, do I get my microphone on?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, so yeah, I can talk a little bit about the cost estimates. So we had a cost estimate from 2016 when we first did this conceptual community process to come up with a conceptual plan that was more in the range of 15 million. We had that same concept revisited by experts to revisit that estimate, and not surprising, although disappointing perhaps, things are more expensive than they were 4 years ago. And we're not, even if Measure UU were to pass, we wouldn't break ground right now. So there's also then a couple more years built into that escalation into that estimate. So, but to break down the 19.5, maybe in as simple terms, the building, which has been talked about, which conceptually now is two stories, and has some multi-use and tennis bathrooms for the tennis courts included as well, is roughly $6 million. A little more than that if you project out and escalate to when we might actually start construction. The pools are roughly 8 million now, 9 million projecting out. And the site work, which I think often gets sort of forgotten or lost, although anyone who's built in the hills and bedrock know that our topography and our site work can be pretty pricey. So that is at about $3.5 to $4 million. So that got us up into the 18.5 million when you're thinking about when we might actually start this project. And then we, because we're always, our city council is always fiscally conservative, we built in a buffer that was sort of calculated around interest rates. If we don't expect to see interest rates to go up, but if we were to see a significant interest rate rise, we built in like a full % interest rate buffer into that number. So that's how we got to the 19.5 par bond amount.
Okay.
I'll stop there. I'm happy to if you'd like more beyond.
I think that answered it.
That was definitely a lot.
We all have those on the council. We've heard that before, but so it is the same numbers we've heard.
Excellent. And by the way, getting quite a few questions about the existing pool, and I think you've said pretty clearly that you guys explored that, looked at that. In fact, the last 10, 15 years, you've been looking at it almost every single year, and at this point, we've just sort of come to the end of that. And I know there were estimates which you quoted, Betsy, around a couple $1 million to repair the deck. But again, that is just not a complete solution. So great. We do have sort of some questions about how this relates to other projects in the city. And there's definitely a question about other facilities that we're looking at, public safety issues. So we should address that. Can you give us some thoughts about how the pool relates to our public safety needs?
Okay. Well, I will start on that. So I guess the simple question is the pool is very separate and distinct from what we're talking about for public safety or other improvements in city facilities. The city council has for 4 or 5 years at least been focused on improving and updating the city's infrastructure. You can look at the flow of funds and how we put money aside for facilities maintenance and making improvements in our facilities. It became clear that we have a need on the pool is one, but also we have a need which became even larger earlier this year when we took a hard look at our public safety facilities to see if they meet what is called the essential facilities standards. And they came up very short. So that is something that we continue to work on. It is not, we had talked about it. If you look at the Budget Advisory Financial Planning Report issued earlier this year or middle of the year, it was a very strong recommendation that we really attend to those facilities as soon as possible. We are doing this, but right now we don't have a real firm idea of what these buildings would exactly look like, what would be required to renovate or replace, where we would do it, how we do it, how long it would take. We're just not there yet. So it's very important to realize that we have not prioritized the pool over public safety facilities or essential facilities. We're ready to go with the pool, and there's a real need to do that now because of its conditions. But we're definitely have our mind and our eyes on public safety facilities, something we are working on now. The city staff is already working on it, talking to consultants. We have some further estimates. So we'll get a much better idea, I think, to be practical about it, probably after the first of the year, when the city council will review what that might look like. And then that will start another process of what we would do, in what order we would do it, and what would it cost? And equally important, how would we finance it? So that is coming. That is coming. Again, back to the point I made earlier, you really don't want to rush into these things with some ill-conceived, poorly estimated projects. It tells the public that you don't really know what you're doing. So when we come to bring this back again to the public, you're going to see a very clear picture of what's required to update and improve our public safety facilities. But it's not for a minute that we prioritize one or the other.
Excellent, Bob. That is terrific. One of the aspects, I think, of our city leaders that I appreciate so much is how thoughtful and forward-looking our administration is. And sort of with that, let's talk about climate action and how the new pool will fit in. We actually received a couple of community questions on climate. Let me sort of summarize their interests. Voters want to know about how the new pool will help our city meet its objectives to, 1, reduce emissions from city buildings and energy supply, and 2, reduce water usage. And people would certainly appreciate a comparison versus maintaining the existing or rebuilding the existing pool.
I can attempt. My mic is on. Okay. So the city council has made a very clear commitment to Piedmont's climate action plan. And I just wanted to point out that the conceptual plan that we're talking about was developed through a very robust community process in 2016. And then our climate action plan 2.0 was adopted 2 years later in 2018. So I do believe as part of the design development process that's going to take place after UU passes, that there will be that lens applied to this project in terms of thinking about sustainability, thinking about lowering energy consumption, lowering greenhouse gas emissions. This is something that is very much on people's minds, obviously. So that's not lost in this process. That will definitely be part of the discussion. And as I mentioned earlier, those are goals that we all want to achieve together as a community. So the good news is that pool technology has come a long way in 56 years. Like car engines, pool heaters are way more efficient. The equipment is way more energy efficient than it was 5 decades ago. We all also now have solar technology, which is exciting. And there are many smart people in Piedmont. And I'm confident we can collaborate with the LEED certified architects and engineers and interested community members to rebuild this pool as facility that maximizes efficiency and minimizes consumption. Now, you mentioned leaking. There is no way to fix the leak. So just to clarify, we do not have $2 million to redo the deck, and the deck is crumbling. So it's not like the leak is from one specific spot. The whole infrastructure of the pool is turning into dust because concrete outdoor pools have a lifespan, and we have exceeded ours. It's 30 to 50 years, and now we're in year 56. So the other thing environmentally that I think is really important to think about is how often we're using our cars. And I think having a pool facility in town that kids can walk across the street from school, that families can ride their bikes to, that people can walk to from other parts of town will greatly reduce the number of car trips that would otherwise have to be made, again, if people are leaving town to go find places to swim. That's actually going to increase our use of greenhouse gas.
I would just add that I think that the way the city staff and council have worked for the past 10 years or so, and what the community expects, that very likely the new pool facility would be as environmentally friendly as conceivably possible in all respects.
Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing from you is this is a priority for us, and a lot of the specifics aren't drawn out right now, but is clearly is something that's right in the bullseye of what we care about. And maybe you could just talk for a moment about reducing water usage. If we're leaking 1 million gallons a year, 3,000 a day, do you think this pool is going to reduce our water usage?
I think we can do that. We can stop the leak. Then there's the people be pretty angry, I think.
Terrific. Great. Well, we're getting towards the end here, but actually we have a few sort of very specific questions. Could you talk about private fundraising for the facility that can be done after the measure is approved?
Sure.
I'm happy to take that one.
Okay, Betsy, go ahead.
Yeah. And I'm really just getting my information from Steve Collins' letter that I believe was in the Post in the Exedra, and in which he said that PRFO, which is the Piedmont Recreational Facilities Organization, that did such a wonderful job raising funds for the renovations at Hampton Park, as well as the Quarry Reach Tennis Center, the tennis courts in the center of town. If Measure UU is approved, and voters want to have a pool in Piedmont, then PRFO has offered to oversee a fundraising effort that would help to reduce the overall cost to taxpayers and supplement what we are able to do in terms of this project. And I think that is a really generous offer from a private nonprofit. I don't know that anyone is under any illusions that we can raise $19 million. That has never, there's nothing in Piedmont's history to indicate that kind of money is a feasible fundraising goal. But I do, based on Hampton, which PRFO raised $800,000, and the Quarry Reach Tennis Center, which I think raised another $400,000, I do think it's a significant offer of that nonprofit to come in and support the city and support the community in this project.
Fantastic. Another question here. You mentioned that the city is losing about $1,000 a day to operate the pool. Do you anticipate the new pool will also cause the city to lose money each year once it's, or is it projected to break even or generate a surplus?
Okay. I don't think we would expect to lose $1,000 a day. Okay. Not because we're losing that money because of antiquated equipment and the fact that it's just not working very well. So one of the things we did, and very carefully, as we began to think about replacing the pool, as important to the design and concept was what would the operating costs look like. And we spent a lot of time with that, asked consultants, sought outside people that are knowledgeable in this field to figure out, okay, based on the Piedmont model, so to speak, of mix of swim teams, schools, things like that, what would the cost be on this? And we came up to proceed on this, which is really one of the key variables that convinced us to move forward, is we're very confident we can run this new pool in a very cost-effective manner. We do not think a subsidy from the general fund would be significant. And actually, we believe that we could get with, as someone pointed out to us, if we were close prior to, these heavy expenses from the maintenance, if we were close to nearly breaking even on the old, outdated, antiquated facility, then if we are able to provide the community a really first-class facility that is up to date and modern, then there's a very good expectation we should be very much close to break even, if not better. We're not counting on it. Be very clear that this is a money-making venture. But this is building like any of our other facilities. This is to support the community. But we do think we can do it in a very cost-effective way. We would not have proceeded on this if we didn't think that. And that has always been an issue that kept the city from wanting to engage the pool over many, many, many years. The fear that it would be very much a black hole of costs and expenses. We're very confident right now that we will avoid that, and we can run this in a very cost-effective manner.
Thank you, Bob. I think that tonight you and the team have really underscored how thoughtful this proposal is that we brought before the voters, and I appreciate that that the costs are going to be not significant. Hopefully, break even. We have one more question. Although it's a school district's responsibility, is the city able to help facilitate using another pool during sports seasons? So maybe, Sarah, you can help comment on that. So although it's a school district's responsibility, facilitate using another pool during sports.
Well, the cities and the schools do work very collaboratively together. So I think whenever we have a problem, we often try to meet together and see how we can help each other out. We have been, as a district, immensely grateful for the help from Sarah Lillivand when she was recreation director, and now as city manager, and with the new recreation manager, and as well with the city council. It's just been really nice having a partnership. We are all in it together in terms of the taxes that pay for the schools are the same, come from the same people who pay the city taxes. And similarly, we hope that by, having the good schools, that we're attracting people to come live in Piedmont. So we are very much in it together. And, we've also had a lot of help from our community members, just as we have so many fantastic leaders who've, stepped up to lead this campaign. The boosters, the PHS boosters, is a very active group, and they raise a lot of money, increasingly, since our schools are underfunded by the state more and more. It's, not quite pay to play, because we still, as a public school district, let anybody participate and encourage anybody to participate in every activity. But we also ask our parents to donate, quite generously every time their kids are involved in a musical theater production or on a team or whatnot. So anyway, we appreciate the help from the city. And I appreciate the question.
Well, certainly people move to Piedmont for the schools. I had noticed that while there was a dip in home sales during the beginning of the pandemic, we have now exceeded a number of homes that we were sold in 2020 versus 2019. And that, again, just sort of underscores how desirable Piedmont is as a city. And I think everyone knows that the vast, vast, vast majority of people moving into Piedmont are people who value the schools and have young children. And as far as I know, virtually every parent wants their child to be water safe, to swim, and that's just blocking and tackling, right? It's really much more the upside of the community and sort of the enrichment that a pool, I think, could offer. And as we wrap up here, I just personally can't imagine a world-class city like Piedmont being without a pool. When you look around the rest of the East Bay, would we be the only city without a pool? And what does that say about us? So with that, why don't we go to close? And I'd love it if each one of you guys could take a minute and just give a few closing remarks about the importance of Measure UU.
Sure. Okay.
Sure. All right. Well, I will speak on behalf of the entire school board. I have their permission, and many families with school-aged children who strongly endorse Measure UU and hope that the community will support this ballot measure. For more than 50 years, as we all know, the Piedmont Pool has been an integral part of our community, serving children, adults of all ages, and as we've just been talking about, our students. These locked gates have given us a glimpse into Piedmont's future without a pool. Generations of children have learned to swim in the Piedmont Pool, some as toddlers taught by local teens, others during the swimming lessons that have been an integral part of the middle school PE curriculum. And while contact sports present risks for concussions, as I mentioned earlier, water sports are safe and provide a great outlet to relieve stress. Swim team and water polo are increasingly popular sports for our students, and I'm sure many of us and our neighbors of all ages would love to go for a swim on one of these hot days. We know that mental health concerns are rampant, and there's nothing like a swim to make people feel better. So whether it be for school programs, recreation, physical education, or extracurricular activities, access to a pool is absolutely critical for our schools, for our children, and for Piedmonters of all ages. So if we want to have a community pool in Piedmont, we need to get going now on a replacement. And we know Piedmont has wonderful parks and services and schools and community. Amazing people. And to lose this pool would be a great loss. So I really hope everybody on this call encourages their family members and their neighbors to support Measure UU. And thank you for letting me join you tonight and for letting me be a part of this campaign. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Sarah. Bob or Betsy?
Okay, I'll let, I think I will go next. So what strikes me, and I was listening to Sarah very carefully about, what the pool represents and what it does accomplish. As I said minutes, earlier this evening, it really is about the community. And I've been talking to people, and when we talked about Measure UU, I said, this is really about the community. This is something that is about Piedmont. And as a elected leader here in town, I've been doing this for quite some time. It's very important that you try to gauge that, and it's very important that we stand up sometime and say, this is not an easy task. This will not be easy, but this is something we need to do. We need to bring this to the public. We need to make the case. We need to make the argument. We need to convince voters that this is very important and it's very necessary to do. And I think the campaign has been in the process of doing that very clearly, very comprehensively for the last few months. For me personally, I've been looking at the pool, driving by it for many years, and I think about it and I said, we really need a new one. And it's very important for our community to have that because it's very important in the fabric of our community. And I think that not to push on this and not to bring this to the public would have been a great disservice. And that's not something that elected officials can do. We need to look out for the entire community. And as we discussed, the pool does touch so many people. And now it's time to fill that need. And now it's time to step forward. And now it's time to build a new pool. I'm very confident, actually, and I've said this to others. Pools are a hard sell, we've been told. I'm confident that in this community, if any community can do this, it's the community of Piedmont. I'm very confident. I hope everyone vote for UU. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Betsy, final word.
Okay, that is a hard act to follow. Thank you, Bob. So I guess I just want to add, if anyone still has questions that haven't been addressed tonight, I would encourage you to go to the campaign website. The campaign has put together an amazingly comprehensive website that has FAQs. It has the City of Piedmont FAQs. It has FAQs that have come up through the course of the campaign. It has tons of links and information, and that is www.communitypoolforpiedmont.com. You can also, through that website, send a question to the campaign team, and I know they've been very responsive and thorough in their answers. And speaking of the campaign team, I just want to take a moment and appreciate Anne, Amy, and Vince and the hundreds of volunteers that they have gathered together to spend thousands of hours working really hard to pass Measure UU for the future of Piedmont. Together they have run a truly positive grassroots campaign, neighbors reaching out to neighbors to have conversations about the importance of the pool. And I've just been so impressed by their careful and thoughtful approach during, a challenging time. So Measure UU is not only endorsed by the entire City Council and the entire school board, but also by the League of Women Voters of Piedmont, the Piedmont Beautification Foundation, as I mentioned earlier, the Piedmont Recreational Facilities Organization, parents clubs from all 3 elementary schools, the middle school, the high school, the Piedmont High School Boosters, and even the Piedmont Soccer Club. So, I mean, it's just so heartening to see the widespread community support for this, and the enthusiasm and efforts to bring people together and strengthen our community truly reflect the very best of Piedmont, and it just makes me so proud, and I'm just so grateful. So speaking of the best of Piedmont, I want to take a moment too and thank both Bob and Sarah for their tremendous service to our community over the past decade. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of time, energy, and talents, Sarah, that you and Bob have both brought towards the success of our community, and everyone on this call owes you a huge debt of gratitude for making Piedmont, a wonderful place to live and raise a family. And Bob, what you have done over your tenure to put Piedmont on firm financial footing is just incredible. So I just wanted to appreciate both of you and appreciate what you've done for the community, and thank everyone on this call for joining. And I hope you join us in voting yes on Measure UU. Thank you.
Thank you. Kind words. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll be making a replay of this available that you can share with other people. We'll get that out to you. But we definitely look forward to getting a yes vote on Measure UU. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening.